Hey everyone, Dr. Alan Riddle with Dynamic Health Solutions, finishing up our series on strategies to help counteract stress in your life. Today we're going to be dealing with emotional strategies, and the reason these are probably the most effective and most powerful ways to counteract stress is because it allows the release of a neurotransmitter in your brain called oxytocin. Oxytocin is a very powerful neurotransmitter that's related to our ability to connect and have relationships with people, and that is a very calming and peaceful way of helping our brains to overcome that fight or flight response and get into more resting and repairing and relating and allowing itself to heal. So one of the first ways, and most effective, hopefully for most of us, is that spending time with our friends and family. They have a very calming effect because you feel as a membership of a group, hopefully. And being a member of that group, once again, helps with the release of the oxytocin, the feeling of being welcomed and being involved. And that those things have huge impacts on, once again, the release of oxytocin to allow for your brain to repair and to heal itself and to combat the fight or flight stress response. Second, we somewhat don't always remember or think of them, but cats and so man's best friend, cats and dogs. They found through research that when you pet an animal, and it has to be a cat or a dog, it can't be a lizard, it can't be a spider, it's got to be something that you can actually have that's that reaction to you when you are petting them. So when you pet a cat, the cat will purr and respond. Same with dogs. Dogs will roll on their backs and want to scratch their bellies. So there's this relationship that and this connection that happens when you are interacting with cats and dogs, which have shown huge, again, effects on releasing stress in your body and releasing large amounts of oxytocin, which once again works with that ability to connect and have relationship with other people, which helps with the decreasing of that fight or flight response. See next. Going up and giving a hug, and hugs from people that you know. Now I know there's people on the internet that go along and they give free hugs to people, and that's awesome. The individual I've seen doing that is a very caring and person that wants to help kind of break down these issues that are holding people apart from each other. But if you want to get a true release of oxytocin, it has to be a hug from somebody that you care or that you know. It's just if you ever had that experience where you've hugged somebody that you don't know and then you've hugged somebody that you do know, there is definitely a difference from one to the other. So once again, it's the releasing of the oxytocin because of the fact that you know these people and you have a connection with them, or you potentially are building a connection with them, and that once again helps release the oxytocin in the system. From an emotional standpoint, that helps break down that fight or flight high stress response. Asking for help. If you're struggling, asking for help once again is a way for you to reach out and help somebody else help you overcome those stress responses. But also when you ask somebody for help, you're actually getting a release of oxytocin for them, because they are once again realizing that you don't ask people for help that you don't know. You're going to ask people that you do know, and when you ask for that help, it helps them feel as if you care about them, and they can in return show that they care for you. And in that relationship and in that connection, that's when the oxytocin becomes released, solidifying those relationships, and once again decreasing the fight or flight response. I mean, we hopefully we're not anxious around people that we know or that we care about. Hopefully those people are helping to us relax and feel accepted and not at strains with the world. Now on the flip side of asking for help, is to give support. Now, you can volunteer your time at church, at other activities, at the Y. There's lots of ways that you can contribute and give support, whether it be physically going somewhere or giving money or any of those things where you are, you know that you are helping to support a cause will help you to release oxytocin into your brain again, because you're making a connection, a relationship, and that relationship is a positive relationship, which again releases the oxytocin into the brain to look for that relationship to become more of a connection, and so that you can have those relationships feel safe to you and not harmful, which would then once again put you in the flight or flight response. Next one is for emotional strategies to relieve stress. If we think it would be a pretty straightforward one, is humor. So if you're having a bad day, sometimes what I will do is I have several comedians that I have saved on my list on Netflix, and so if I'm having a stressful day, I'll go and I'll pull up some of those videos and watch some of the comedians. And even though you watch the punchline 2, 3, 4 times, if it's a good comedian and it's that type of day, you find it funny every time. And that once in that laughing, basically when you start laughing, your body is releasing epinephrine, norepinephrine, different types of painkillers into your gut. That's why when you potentially laugh so hard your guts hurt. It's because you've actually run out of those neurotransmitters that inhibit pain, and you actually start to feel the pain from the muscles in your belly, which at that point, not necessarily a bad deal, because that way if you drained out those neurotransmitters, chances are your oxytocin is going to start to get released, and once again help with that connection and relationship and helping you to calm down that fight or flight response. You kind of hear about this more and more in the media and in Facebook, and you see postings and on YouTube, but just to sit down and count your blessings, to feel grateful for the things that you have. I've always kind of been under the auspices of, no matter how bad things get, there's probably somebody out there who has things worse than I do, and that doesn't take much to imagine that. All you gotta do is turn on the news, and more often than not, you'll see that yes, somebody is having some challenges that by far and by large outweigh anything that you are potentially going through at that time. And just with the old, this too shall pass, keep in mind that even though things are hard now, they will eventually change and get better. Crying, also one way to release oxytocin into the system now, and it's not the fake cry, it's the deep felt. Let yourself have a good cry. They've actually done some studies on the tears of your eyes and how they differ from when you are just blinking your eyes and have dust flies in there and you tear up, versus actually having an emotional reaction or response to something. There are different, actually, chemical differences in those tears, and so crying is another essential way for us to release the oxytocin, which once again helps the connections. It's if you're at unfortunately at a funeral and you are crying, you're around a bunch of other people that are sharing the same experience, and with that connection, you release the oxytocin. Okay, next. Now, it can be in the shower, it can be in a concert choir, it can be down the road in your car, but singing has profound effects into releasing the levels of oxytocin into the system. So those are some emotional relief strategies, again, for helping with for combating or counteracting the stress response in our lives. A little bit of a tangent, I know it seems a little bit on odds, but just something I wanted to bring up with oxytocin, because it tends to be a challenge for some people. That oxytocin, one of the reasons, it's a couple things actually. Oxytocin has been shown in large amounts to be able to help people with addictions. Oxytocin is one of these wonderful neurotransmitters that actually can break down the addictive cycles that people have in concerning with drugs or alcohol or sex or gambling or whatever their addiction might be. As a person's oxytocin levels increase, their capacity for these addictions to remain strong links start to break down. It's probably one of the reasons why Alcoholics Anonymous does so well with their individuals, is for them to do so well, is they form this community of other people that have the same challenges going on. When they have this community put together, every time they meet, they build a stronger and stronger relationship with each other, and as they do that, more and more oxytocin gets released. Well, the challenge with oxytocin is, as wonderful of a neurotransmitter as it is, it takes a long time for the levels to increase. So as you keep going to more and more of the sessions, and you keep having these meetings with these people that you realize and recognize that they have similar situations as yourself, your oxytocin levels actually start to go up. So as they're going through the 12 steps and the oxytocin levels are increasing, it's actually enabling them to have the capacity to break the addiction to whatever they're there for, because of the oxytocin's effect on the other neurotransmitters. In this case, dopamine is probably the one that's the most addictive of all of our neurotransmitters. Now, another tangent I wanted to roll up onto is that when women are giving birth, when the uterine wall contracts and the baby's head presses against the cervix, there's a release of oxytocin. Oxytocin is the neurotransmitter that is used to cause the contractions of the uterine wall. Every time the baby ends up hitting the cervical wall, the oxytocin gets released, and the levels keep increasing the strength of the contractions, which then leads up to eventually the baby being born. However, what did we also just learn about oxytocin? Oxytocin is the neurotransmitter for connections and for relationships and for caring about other people. So as the mother's giving birth to the baby and they're going through this birthing process, mom's oxytocin levels keep increasing, so that when the baby finally is born and mom gets to see this baby, there's this huge connection between mom and the baby. However, what have we seen in the last 5, 10, 15 years that's becoming we see more and more of a challenge with it? Women are dealing with postpartum depression. Part of the issue is there are more and more C-sections being done, and I'm not against C-sections. If there's an emergency, if the baby's in trouble, yes, please perform the C-section. However, if the baby is healthy and mom is healthy, to get that connection, the baby should be born naturally, so that mom has the levels of oxytocin increase at the proper rates, so that connection is there, so that they don't have to have things occurring to them like postpartum depression. So I just want to kind of give that tangent on there, because oxytocin is such a very powerful neurotransmitter, but we don't hear about it as much because it takes so long for it to build up in the system, that we really have just started to learn some of the great things that it can do for us when it gets up into those regions that helps to counteract what some of the other neurotransmitters are doing. Now, once again, this is Dr. Rudolph with Dynamic Health Solutions. Hopefully you will have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.